mind is the battlefield. The world thinks wars are fought with guns, blades, and blood. But Thomas Shelby knows better. Long before a man lifts a weapon, the real fight has already begun in his mind. That's the battlefield no one sees. No smoke, no trenches, no bullets, just thoughts, breaking, clashing, shifting, shaping the man who will walk into the world. If your mind collapses, the rest of you collapses with it. And that's why Shelby guards his mind more fiercely than he guards his empire. Because everything he controls starts with what he controls inside. When life hits you, it never hits the body first. It hits the mind. Doubt, fear, anxiety, betrayal. These things don't break bones, they break thoughts. And once your thinking fractures, everything else follows. Thomas Shelby learned that in the mud and flames of France. He learned that the strongest soldier isn't the one who fires the most rounds. It's the one who stays calm when death sits beside him. It's the one who quiets the chaos inside long enough to think, to plan, to act with intention instead of panic. That's the man who survives. That's the man who wins. Most people lose because they never master themselves. They let their minds wander like stray dogs, running toward fear, running toward weakness, running toward every memory that hurts. Shelby doesn't allow that. His mind is a tight line, disciplined, sharpened, locked in. He decides what enters, what stays, and what gets thrown out. His thoughts serve him, not the other way around. And that's why he can stand in a room full of enemies and still look like the calmest man alive. They don't understand him. They can't read him, because his mind is not a battlefield of confusion. It is a fortress of clarity. When a man learns to dominate his inner world, the outer one bends in response. That's why Thomas Shelby wins deals without speaking, wins fights without moving, wins respect without demanding it. His strength comes from within, from a mind trained to remain unshaken, even when the ground beneath him cracks. He knows that if he controls his mind, he controls his decisions. And if he controls his decisions, he controls his fate. That's the formula the world never teaches you. They tell you to be strong on the outside, lift heavier, shout louder, stand taller. But that isn't power. Power is internal, silent, invisible. It's the discipline to think when others panic, to stay focused when others fall apart. The truth is this: the world will always try to invade your mind, with noise, with fear, with expectations that don't belong to you. But the man who wins, the man who shapes his world, is the one who guards his mind like a kingdom. That's Thomas Shelby's real weapon, not the razor in his cap, not the men who follow him, but the thoughts he commands, the silence he controls, the inner war he refuses to lose. Because once you master your mind, you master everything else. Emotion is the enemy of power. Thomas Shelby learned early that a man who cannot control his emotions is a man who will be controlled by the world. Anger, fear, jealousy, grief. These are the tools life uses to break you, to bend you, to turn you into something predictable and weak. And predictable men don't survive long. Predictable men lose everything. That's why Shelby refuses to let emotion steer the wheel. He may feel it, he's human, but he never lets it command him. Emotion knocks at the door, but he doesn't invite it in. Not when decisions have to be made. Not when power is on the line. Most men let their emotions drag them into battles that don't matter. They react too fast, speak too soon, and burn too hot. They shout when they're angry, cry when they're scared, tremble when they're unsure. Shelby does none of that. His anger is quiet, controlled, weaponized. His fear is buried beneath a layer of calm that unnerves anyone who stands in front of him. His grief never spills out into the world. He carries it like a secret bullet in his pocket, one that nobody knows is there. That's how he remains powerful, unreadable, untouchable. Because the moment a man reveals emotion, he reveals weakness, and the world will use it against him. Show them your fear, and they'll push harder. Show them your anger, and they'll provoke you. Show them your sadness, and they'll take advantage. Thomas Shelby doesn't give the world anything to work with. His emotions may stir inside him, but outwardly, you see only calm, the kind of calm that terrifies louder, weaker men. It's not that he feels nothing. It's that he refuses to let emotion drive his fate. That discipline is what separates him from the rest. Emotion clouds judgment. It blinds men, makes them act without thinking, makes them betray their own purpose just to satisfy a momentary feeling. A man ruled by emotion can be manipulated, baited, broken. Shelby knows this. That's why, when he walks into a room, he enters with a mind sharper than any blade. He calculates, he observes, he measures. He doesn't respond to insults. He doesn't react to threats. He watches, he thinks. And when he finally moves, it's deliberate, precise, impossible to counter. A man who controls his emotions controls the battlefield. Whether it's business, war, or life, the principle is the same. The calm man controls the chaotic man. Thomas Shelby lets others lose their temper. Let them explode. Let them shout. Let them reveal their intentions. Emotion exposes them. Emotion traps them. Emotion ruins them. And while they drown in their feelings, he remains centered, thinking clearly, acting strategically, always 2 steps ahead. That's why he wins. Not because he's the strongest, not because he's the fastest, but because he's the one with the tightest grip on himself. Many men mistake emotional expression for strength. They think shouting makes them powerful, crying makes them brave, and breaking down proves their depth. But Shelby's world doesn't reward expression, it rewards control. The man who can stand in the fire without flinching is the man others follow. The man who feels everything but shows nothing is the man who becomes a leader. Emotion may be natural, but discipline is chosen. And in the world, Thomas Shelby walks in. The disciplined man always wins. The mind is a battlefield. Thomas Shelby understands something most men never learn. The real war isn't waged with guns, or knives, or fists. The real war happens inside the mind. Long before a man steps into the room, before he shakes a hand or makes a deal, or faces an enemy, the victory or defeat is already decided in his head. The mind is where doubts whisper, where fears take shape, where every weakness tries to claw its way to the surface. And unless a man learns to conquer that battlefield, he'll never conquer anything outside of it. Shelby fights that war every day. Not with noise, not with panic, but with a discipline carved from years of pain and survival. He knows that the mind can betray you faster than any enemy. It tells you you're not enough. It tells you to turn back. It magnifies every threat, exaggerates every fear, and tries to break your will before the world even gets the chance. A weak mind collapses long before the body ever does. And so, Thomas wages war against that weakness, quietly, relentlessly. Most men lose themselves before the fight even begins. They imagine failure, and so they fail. They imagine danger, and so they freeze. They imagine rejection, and so they never take the first step. Their own mind becomes the enemy they willingly surrender to. But Shelby refuses to be ruled by thoughts that come from fear. He filters them, challenges them, bends them into something useful. If a thought doesn't serve him, it dies right there. If a fear tries to stop him, he walks straight through. That is how he wins, not by waiting for courage, but by acting despite doubt. Because in the battlefield of the mind, hesitation is death. One moment of uncertainty can cost everything. Thomas Shelby doesn't give space for that. He doesn't negotiate with fear. He doesn't bargain with doubt. He crushes them before they have time to grow roots. His mind becomes a fortress not impenetrable, but defended with a kind of ruthless clarity that allows no weakness to linger. And this is why people follow him. Not because he's the loudest, not because he's the strongest, but because he's the one whose mind remains calm while everyone else is spiraling. When others panic, he plans. When others hesitate, he acts. When others fall apart, he holds the center. That composure, that internal strength, is what creates the illusion of invincibility. And sometimes, illusion is more powerful than truth. But even Shelby knows the truth. The mind must be trained like a soldier. It must be disciplined, sharpened, hardened. Left alone, it becomes chaotic, unpredictable, and dangerous. Left unchecked, it feeds on fear and insecurity. So he trains it, daily, quietly, like a ritual. He controls what he focuses on. He directs what he allows in. He decides what thoughts live and which ones die. And in doing so, he takes command of the only battlefield that ever really mattered. Thomas Shelby doesn't win because he avoids struggle. He wins because he prepares for it long before it arrives. He fights the war in his head, so he doesn't have to fight it later in the world. A man who conquers his mind becomes unshakable, immovable, a force that cannot be manipulated or broken. Most men fear the world. Shelby learned to fear only one thing, a mind he doesn't control. Control the mind, and you control your fate. Lose it, and the world will control you. That is the truth he built his empire on. That is the battlefield where Thomas Shelby always wins. Your world bends to your discipline. Thomas Shelby built his empire on one principle that most men overlook. Discipline shapes destiny, not luck, not talent, not ambition alone. Discipline, the quiet, relentless force that bends the world to the will of the man who refuses to break. Most people chase motivation. They wait for the right moment, the right feeling, the perfect conditions. They think success is born from excitement, from passion, from some spark that appears out of nowhere. But Thomas Shelby knows the truth. Motivation fades, passion dies, sparks burn out. Discipline is the only fire that never goes out, because it is fed by choice, not emotion. Shelby wakes before the world does, not because he's inspired, but because he decided long ago that men who rise early rise ahead. He takes action when others hesitate, because hesitation is the habit of the powerless. And he refuses to live like the powerless. He doesn't move with the wind, he moves with intention, with purpose, with a stability that cannot be shaken by setbacks, disappointments, or fear. Discipline is what separates men who dream from men who build. It's what turns pain into strength, failure into strategy, chaos into control. Thomas doesn't rise because life is easy. He rises because he demands it of himself. Every decision he makes, every risk, every sacrifice, every step into the unknown is guided by a discipline that never loosens its grip. And that discipline is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not something you announce to the world. It is silent, ruthless, unapologetically stable. It is waking up even when sleep is easier, showing up even when comfort calls your name, choosing progress when your mind tempts you with excuses. That is the battlefield where real strength is forged in the moments no one sees, in the decisions that seem small but shape everything. Thomas Shelby mastered that battlefield long before anyone knew his name. He learned that discipline is a kind of power that doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It forces the world to adapt. When a disciplined man walks into a room, the environment shifts. People feel it. They sense the focus, the certainty, the unbreakable clarity. Discipline becomes presence, heavy, undeniable, respected. And with discipline comes control. Control of thoughts, control of emotions, control of actions. The kind of control that keeps a man from acting out of fear, from reacting impulsively, from giving power to the things that seek to weaken him. Discipline is how Shelby keeps his mind sharp and his world in order. It's how he stays calm when others lose themselves. It's why his enemies fear him, not because he's unpredictable, but because he's unwavering. Discipline is not just about what you do, It's about what you refuse to do, refusing to bow to fear, refusing to be controlled by desire, refusing to break under pressure, refusing to become the man the world expects, and choosing instead to become the man you need to be. That kind of refusal is power, the kind that creates new paths where none existed, the kind that shapes the world around you, one decision at a time. Thomas Shelby doesn't wait for life to give him direction. He sets the direction himself. Through discipline, he bends his reality, reshapes his circumstances, and commands respect without raising his voice. The world does not hand him control, he takes it, quietly, consistently. Because in the end, your world will always reflect the discipline you carry inside you. With discipline, you rise. Without it, you drift. And drifting is something Thomas Shelby was never born to do. He chooses discipline, and the world falls in line. Conclusion. In the end, everything we've spoken about comes down to one thing. The mind of a man determines the shape of his world. Thomas Shelby did not rise because fate favored him. He did not survive because luck protected him. He built himself. Quietly, brutally, intentionally. And he built his world the same way, through discipline, silence, and an unyielding command over his own thoughts. He understood what most men never learn. Power is not loud. Strength is not emotional. Control is not taken from others. It is taken from yourself. In a world full of noise, he became the man who mastered quiet. In a world full of impulses, he became the man who mastered restraint. In a world full of excuses, he became the man who mastered discipline. The weak wait for the right moment. Thomas creates it. The weak are shaped by emotion. Thomas bends emotion into a weapon. The weak speak to be heard. Thomas stays silent to be understood. He lives by a simple code, a code that built empires long before he ever held a crown. Master your mind, or the world will master it for you. That is the lesson, the warning, the blueprint. Your world is not the product of your circumstances. It is the product of your control over yourself, the discipline you practice, the silence you choose, the thoughts you refuse to surrender. You don't need noise to be powerful. You don't need validation to be strong. You don't need approval to rise. You need clarity. You need intention. You need the mind of a man who refuses to break. Become the one who doesn't react, who calculates. Become the one who doesn't panic, who observes. Become the one who doesn't crumble, who adapts. Because the moment you master your own mind, the world stops being a battlefield and becomes territory you can command. Just like Thomas Shelby.